Hi, inmendham. Thanks for unblocking me. I think that was smart. On the comment rules, I have to say I'm probably not going to be that great at following these rules, but don't jump the gun. And I am going to take into account what you said. I do want to, figure out ways to say things. I won't not say something, but I will try to spend some time to say them in a way that's, reasonable. Or the phrase ulterior motive is something I use more when I'm angry. Other than that, I can just talk about this as the framing. I think when you look at things objective, it brings in a lot of things that I think are errors. On the other hand, also, I don't want to rehash that stuff. You've been listening to me, I can tell. You've stated some of my opinions, like the romanticization of nature. That it's true. I don't think of it that way, but that's a fair way. There's a lot of other things. And I think there's a purpose to nature. I think we're learning from nature. I don't want to become unplugged from it because I think this is the source of knowledge. So, and I believe we always have progress. There will always be more questions. So we're making progress, but we'll never reach a goal other than a milestone where that's good enough. So, this is some differences that we may have, though you sometimes say things along those lines too, so I'm not sure about that. In terms of computability, I've worked in AI before, and I actually have always thought that we will be able to create sentience. Maybe as we create new kinds of computers that do things beyond what we consider computation now, maybe. And I don't know, maybe it is computable. It's possible. In terms of fooling common people, I think that the real tests are more fair because an idiot or a drunk person could think of a lamppost as a person, or talk to a wall, or I mean that won't make that convincing. We really are talking about something that would appeal to a relatively intelligent person, which I think your common person is relatively intelligent. In terms of being able to tell the difference between a computer um, and a real person. The menagerie, but I looked it up. It wasn't the episode I thought. I was thinking of a different episode. But anyway, listen, I love virtual environments. I do think there's a lot of good they can do. I think freeing and giving bodies back to handicapped people. I even think for able-bodied people, to overcome our limitations, to test ourselves, to have experiences and risky experiences that aren't really risky and things like this. It will be great. It's just this other thing about, I think it's limited what you can learn in there. You can learn from other people, but what about everybody as a whole learning more things? I don't think you'll learn more things in that sense in the virtual reality, though you learn a lot about other people, and that's good. But I just think it's limited. But we disagree on that. On the extinction thing, it's a matter of fine. You're not really worried about extinction. So then remove that from your explanation how this thing solves extinction, because it doesn't solve extinction. It just makes it easier not to care, because you can have all this imagery and the beautiful imagery of nature without actually preserving living nature. And I don't like that, but okay, again, we disagree. But we don't disagree on the fact that this isn't really a solution for extinction. We disagree on if extinction needs a solution, I guess. In terms of people slaves that don't commit suicide, saying they want to live as slaves. No, it would mean that they still want to live. Not necessarily to live as slaves forever, but to fight for their freedom, to hope and work for a day beyond being slaves. I'm not really sure why. I'm just saying I see a person that is surviving, and I want them to realize there's a reason for that. Okay, and I think that'll help them want to survive. Okay, I admit that if suicide's made really easy, people will push the button. But that's just because they can make an instantaneous decision when they're at a low point. Making it a little bit harder just makes them, take the average. You can't just want to commit suicide for 5 minutes and do it. You'd have to want to commit suicide for months. I think it's reasonable to have some sort of limits like that, because I don't want people to commit suicide, because I think overall people will embrace life if they look at these months-long periods. Some people still want to commit suicide, and sadly, I guess, I definitely supported Dr. Kevorkian for people that had terminal illnesses And in general, I mean, I don't support suicide. I think there's a lot of reasons that we've been talking about to embrace life, but I don't think it's my place to say for other people. So basically, I do think that it's a human right, your control over your own life. Um, I'm not saying we can't interrupt nature's brilliance, like can't use condoms or something. I believe that condoms are a part of nature. We're a part of nature. We can develop means of self-control, just like developing the will in the first place. It becomes a part of nature because we're a part of nature, and so I think we can, interrupt patterns we see in nature because nature is not a fixed thing. Nature allows us to change it. The whole oxygen atmosphere. That's the output of plant life. If life died on Earth, the oxygen would, oxidize and be removed really quickly. So, I mean, this changed nature. This planet obviously is an oxygen-rich environment, and that's because previous life, changed it. And so that's all part of nature. Okay, so that's really what I'm saying, is that we can be a part of nature and change nature. And the fact that we can do that is a reason to not be too harsh on judging nature as a whole. But also as a relativist, I wouldn't take the whole universe and judge it. Again, it's just a difference. We can disagree on that because, this is the other thing. Mukhtar made this sustainability, and whether you reply or maybe you already have to that, I would like to turn to some of those questions, both because they're interesting, as I was saying, but also because, I think these are areas we can find out that our divergent bases, come together. You say a lot of things that, in principle, I agree with. I do want to alleviate suffering. I think the way to do that is not to focus too much on suffering, which is a symptom, but to look at the sources of suffering. And that's the way I think you can avoid suffering, and that there'll be kinds of suffering left. Because like in your virtual reality, if you fall in love with another real person that just happens to be in this virtual reality, there could be love triangles and all kinds of things that cause emotional suffering, but they aren't really caused by oppression, and so that's just sort of the person's fault and risk they take on their own, what kind of people they get involved with. I do romanticize nature a bit, but the thing is this, it's like love is a beautiful thing. It's like a great meal is a beautiful thing. It's just like the sex example. Well, we know that's just because that's just our taste buds helping us find food that is of value and sustenance to us. What tastes good to another animal is different because they eat different food sources. But I still can't have a good meal. I mean, it is beautiful. It's just like, so in the sex example, love is beautiful. Yeah, that it can be reduced to this trick genetics is playing on us, but it doesn't mean that it can't be a beautiful thing. See, it's not objectively beautiful, but subjectively it's still beautiful. And so, see, this goes back to why I use the subjective basis, so that I can enjoy the things and not reduce them down, because in an objective viewpoint, everything is cold and dead and sort of valueless. Partially because there is no real objective viewpoint. You have to have, a single thing, and and it can have parts, but in some sense it has to be single. And to say the universe is single when it's infinite and it has all the possibilities and includes us, I just don't go for that. Again, this has become a video on things we can agree to disagree on. One thing I agree very much is I totally agree about taking this word objectivity back from objectivists. I entirely agree it's an important concept. For people that are not yet objective in the classical sense, let alone my relativistic sense, they should just focus on becoming objective. It's just that once they've done that, which I think includes you, so once somebody's done that and become objective, looking at the facts, being honest about the facts, then when they're looking at what objectivity is built out of, I want them to admit that it's built out of subjectivity. Because you see, objectivity and subjectivity are not opposites, okay? Any more than a brick church could be the opposite of a brick. No, it's different from a brick, okay? But it's, it's made of brick. So that's the point. Objectivity is a model made of subjectivity. Okay, I don't want to open that can of worms because, as I said, I was starting here with the agreement. But you're right. The perversion of objectivity that the objectivists, the Randian objectivists, give the term is so perverse that, yeah, you can teach them your version of objectivity, and I'm all for that. I think they probably need to learn that first before they get these subtleties of relativity that will take them yet further. And so that's the thing. I just think that, yes, subjectivity pollutes objectivity, but there's no way around that. So I just want us to admit it. And so I just want to admit that. And polluted puts a negative term on it, but I'm fine. It does pollute it. I'm subtracting my biases all the time. It's just that I realize what I'm doing is sizing up my bias and then subtracting that estimation of my bias. You see, so that involves me having to look really clearly at my bias. I can't pretend there's a way to get to actually get around my bias. I have to go through my bias, see it, size it up, then I can try to take it out, and it leaves a little artifact in the image. So we have subjectivity leaving these artifacts in the image, and if you're looking really closely at the images, at the reality, in other words, we can see and take these artifacts into account. It's like understanding how our own image processing is working. And of course, by image here, I mean in general, the whole model, all senses, not just vision, but I'm using vision as a metaphor. Anyway, take care.